Alright, guys. So welcome back to our fourth episode. Technically, we are Catalyst Conversation. We talk anything and everything about startups. So today it is my honor to have Amanda. So for the benefits of the listeners, Amanda, right? Of course, you can discuss more on the topic itself later on. Stay tuned. But mine, if you could start by telling us a bit about yourself and also your venture.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Joseph, and hi, everyone. I'm Amanda.
Yep.
I currently work at 500 Global, which is a global venture capital firm.
Yep.
We invest across 80 countries globally. And at the moment, like firm-wide, we actually invested in more than 3,000 companies
Wow.
in various sectors. And for me specifically, my mandate is actually to invest across Southeast Asia in tech companies that are in early stages of their growth. So yeah, prior to joining 500, I was actually a practicing lawyer in an international law firm, specializing in financial services, M&A, and corporate law.
Yeah. Great. So I have a spontaneous question, right? So what makes you, I'm just curious, you graduated as a lawyer, you're working in international law firm. So what makes you decide to join IPC?
Oh, I get that question a lot actually. So, the reason why, during my practice in the law firm, I actually advise a lot of clients from, in the financial sector, right, from banks to insurance companies and etc.
Yeah.
And one day, I met a fintech company.
Oh.
Yeah. So I met this company called Stashaway.
Oh.
I'm sure some of you guys,
Yeah.
or the listeners might be using Stashaway as well.
Yeah.
So I started by advising them, of course, with the firm. Yeah, and I realized that, hey, actually there's something quite different out there, like related to technology, and it's so special that I wanted to learn more about. And that's when I started to learn more about venture capital and eventually landed myself in.
Wow. That's very cool. That's very cool. I would like to kick things off, right? So, based on your context and also some of your experiences, I would be very interested to know, right? Since you have been in the VC journey quite a bit for how long?
5 years now.
For 5 years, yeah, 5 years now. So, what will be the tech trends? So today we want to talk about the tech trends and the future of fundraising. I think you're the best person to give your insights, and definitely trying to help founders like you to know if today what kind of businesses, for example, if you don't have your product market fit yet, or you're still thinking what kind of venture to go into.
Yeah.
This today topic will be good because the latest tech trend as well as what are the future of fundraising, especially from the perspective of VC, right? So in that sense, anything you can share?
But I think actually a lot of things excites me, and I feel like there's so many interesting things happening in the world, especially like recently, right?
Yeah.
If I can share personally, what are the top three things that come to mind for me personally? I think like one of it is semiconductor, secondly AI, and thirdly healthcare. So I'll explain a little bit more about why I mentioned those two, right? So the semiconductor industry is actually currently very vibrant, especially in Malaysia. We know about Penang, we know about the national semiconductor strategy that was announced by the government and stuff, right? But actually globally, if you zoom out, the semiconductor industry is a 1 trillion industry. And the E&E industry is also around like $3 trillion.
Yeah.
It's actually a very, very sizable market. And why? And like recently, there's so many growth drivers that drove these industries, right? For example, infrastructure-wise, we have better internet connectivity by having like 5G, and people are talking about 6G, right? Yeah, and there's so many things like EV, demand for EVs are getting higher and higher, right? And people are more accustomed to what AI, ML is, and try to adopt them into their businesses or even daily lives, right? So, demand for compute bandwidth is constantly on the rise. So just like very recently, I think like NVIDIA in their recent investor earnings call mentioned that they are already sold out for their latest Blackwell GPUs for the next 12 months.
Wow.
So imagine that, right? And the demand is so high. Maybe like a fun trivia question. Guess how much data does it take to consume 1 hour of Netflix?
Ooh. What on Netflix? How much data?
Yeah, do you consume?
I don't know, man.
So if you are watching, okay, I guess it depends on the video quality that you're opting for.
Yeah.
If you are watching Ultra HD,
Yeah.
it can take up to 7 gigs of data for 1 hour.
Wow.
And imagine like there's so many people around the world who are watching Netflix every day. So imagine that and try to think about like, hey, how much data and infrastructure and what about efficiency in making those things fit for consumers like you and me, right?
Yeah.
So I knew I need to do something about it, as in, how to make things more efficient, how to make sure that, data transmission and power and energy in making sure that we watch Netflix seamlessly is addressed. So recently, like we invested in a company called Lightspeed Streamix.
Yeah.
What it actually does is that essentially to enable that, right? They create an interconnect that is used in data centers to enable power and data to be transmitted more efficiently by using lesser space as well. Because in data centers, real estate is actually a very important thing because
Yeah.
you need to actually utilize every square inch of the data center to give a maximum output, right? So I think that is very interesting to me. And I think the other factor that is catalyzing this is also the demand for memory, right? Other than transmission, we are also storing like photos, videos, and even this podcast, right? When people are streaming it or like you saving it on your computer requires memory, right? And the thing is that right now, even the HBM 3E, I think that's the right for terminology for it, is still on shortage, right? And that's why it's causing like supply for GPUs to be at a shortage at the moment as well. So what if those are the high end things, right? But what about people who are like SMEs or like you and me? Like if we want to use AI, how can we actually have more storage and stuff like that for ourselves?
Yeah.
So what if I tell you that there is actually an alternative way of storing things, right? So recently, like in Malaysia, I'm sure some of the listeners have heard My Storage, which is a Malaysia AI storage.
Yeah.
So it's actually a company or a subsidiary of Phison that is invented, like the father of or the inventor of the USB flash drive.
No.
Last time. So it's actually a Malaysian called Sport, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the Phison company is actually now based in Thailand. And right now, I think like because of whatever that's happening in Malaysia,
Yeah.
he sees an opportunity to start this company called My Storage.
Yeah.
And basically what it is to enable companies or even like, access to AI storage, right? So it's basically SSD. Think about like USB flash drive, but in a slightly bigger format for AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's actually at a very affordable price. So, there are so many things that we can do with semiconductors and even like EVs. Guess how many chips we need for an EV, right?
Yeah.
It can be up to 3,000 chips per EV, right? So there's definitely a lot of innovation and demand for the semiconductor industry and in E&E industry as a whole. Yeah. And I think the second one that I mentioned just now was AI, right?
Yeah.
I think like everyone who have worked with me in the past or somehow knows how much I value efficiency and productivity at work, right? So like with this whole AI wave that I'm super excited about, I think like Southeast Asia is actually very poised to adopt AI as a whole because, of our population and we're so digitally savvy, right? Like 700 million people across Southeast Asia, even like, say, Philippines, Indonesia, they are like one of the, as in like internet penetration and people who are using mobile phones for social media and gaming and et cetera, right? It's just so many people, right? So imagine like how we needed like a few years for the World Wide Web, the internet era to be adopted amongst human beings and in the population. We only need like I think like 2 days or how significantly shorter amount for ChatGPT to acquire 100 million users.
Yeah.
Right. So I think like tech adoption, especially with AI, is going to increase significantly. And I truly believe that, AI, number one, it definitely can drive significant innovation in terms of like the traditional industries, like say manufacturing, agriculture, and even logistics, right? The traditional industries, things that require a lot of manual or human labor or legacy processes. How do you revolutionize or digitalize those things, right? And secondly, in Southeast Asia at least, AI has the ability to provide access or increase access to, say, financial services
Yeah.
or education or healthcare to
Yep.
people who have probably never had the chance to
Yeah.
access those things, right? For example, like in financial services or like, like just helping the underbank. People are using alternative data scoring methods to underwrite things or provide them access to the unbanked, right? So I think like it's really great that we have AI in the corner, right? And actually not in the corner, but in the midst of it, right? And other than that, there's also a lot of like things and technology that are happening at the application layer. We heard about like LLMs, etc., right?
Yeah.
But LLMs, there's so many models, but what are the applications that are built on top of LLMs, right? So, for example, the easiest use case we see data insights,
Yeah.
predictive analysis, right? Like ChatGPT and like certain LLM tools are able to do that for us. But what if like, Case Text, for example, which is a legal startup that does research and also are able to predict, right? Things that a lawyer might need in preparing a brief, for example.
Yeah.
And maybe you need like cybersecurity tools that are able to, either like AI generated to identify certain like threats or even like cure some of those threats, right? Like deep fakes are so prominent in the AI world, right? I've met like a company in Singapore. They have this ability to fact check a lot of things, whether it's like AI generated or whether it's true, depending on certain interviews that are made, right? So I thought that was quite interesting.
That's
And another thing that is also quite interesting is how do you make sure that the data that is going into these LLMs or these models are actually accurate,
yes.
right? Because
Agree.
garbage in, garbage
Yes.
out. So everybody really need to ensure the data sovereignty is good and prime in an organization, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So another company that we recently invested in is actually DQ. So what it does is they call themselves data observability tool, which is to enhance data trust within an organization. So imagine like an organization with, I don't know, 50 people and more, right? Everybody will have their way of storing
Yeah.
or writing data
Yeah.
or recording certain things, right? Imagine it's just a very unstandardized method, or if somebody makes a wrong input or entry into the data, what happens to the organization and the ultimate output, right? So there needs to be certain way to synchronize those things, right? To make sure the output is in pristine condition. And lastly, the third thing that I mentioned is healthcare. You know, you and I experienced COVID just a couple of years ago, and life expectancy globally has decreased by 1.6 years
Okay.
for human beings.
Mm.
So I think like a lot of people are starting to realize that, they need to take care of themselves, right? Like health is the new goal, right? And how do you actually do those things? Like people are more aware about like preventive healthcare, how to take care of yourself. Like I would be more compelled to do a routine health checkup this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
So like, or even like take supplements, for example, right? Are there any, startups or technology out there who could increase the longevity of human beings, right? And on top of that, we have like women's healthcare,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure you're familiar with the topic as well. Like in terms of like fertility, because global total fertility rate has been declining or half since like I think the 1970s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do we ensure that fertility rates continue to maintain at healthy levels so that the human race is still here and all continue to innovate and stuff. And also, I don't know if you know this, but women, according to research, I think it's by McKinsey or Bain, either one of them, that women actually have a longer lifespan than men
I know
by
this.
1,600 days. But women are actually experiencing poorer health than men, even though they can live longer in life. So that's actually very interesting. So how can we improve the quality of life of women, especially in the healthcare segment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things that we can do, right? And I think like lastly, I will also say that non-invasive healthcare is something that I'm actually quite passionate about as well. So if healthcare or something to make yourself or your body or your health better, why does it have to be invasive all the time, right? Recently I came across this technology. It's a company that we've invested called Peak, EEK. So what it does is actually, there's this company in the US called Medtronics. They create this pill can, which is like a capsule-sized camera that you swallow, and then it basically takes picture of your intestines, right?
Okay.
So the traditional way of doing it is colonoscopy,
Yeah.
meaning that you actually have to go under anesthesia, and you know, it's a very uncomfortable, invasive procedure, and it's
Yes.
expensive.
Yes.
And you can't do it alone at home, and neither can you go alone to the hospital because you can't drive home alone
Yeah.
after being under sedation, right? So what this pill or this technology is enabling you to do is that you can probably do it at home, right? In the near future.
Yeah.
And then you can take pictures and it's not invasive. And yeah, like why not, right? That kind of technology that's more affordable to the mass market.
I like what you said. So to break down, it's turning in semiconductor, AI, and of course, healthcare. So yeah, like I really like what you say because it's really like, for example, the semiconductor, it really suits the Southeast Asia as well as Finland, especially this part, the Malaysian market, because the one part you have spoken is very much on the data, right? How can a company store data better and try to save up the space? And you're right, because there's getting more and more data center being built here in Malaysia, right? There's one investment coming in. Yeah, that would be a very good idea for those listeners, right? Yeah, like if they figure out, because this is something that perhaps it fits the market right away, right? There's always a demand, right? And healthcare and of course AI. AI has always been a topic. We deep back later on a bit more on AI. But for healthcare, I agree with you. Because I think health tech, it is, especially in Southeast Asia, mainly in Malaysia, I think, it's just the beginning, right? So today you have seen a lot of companies are venturing into like into apps, it connects to doctors, consultants, so on. But there's a lot more going to, like, for example, the women's healthcare or even male healthcare, right? Or very specific into certain, like what you're saying, pills are eaten and it get to scan through your intestine. I think that is very interesting. That is something that is still very new in the Malaysian market. As for AI, so at least today, right? I think it's very interesting because it's not just AI, because AI is a big topic, and I think I couldn't guarantee, but I would believe that 80% of the, let's say, 80 out of 100 people that are graduating today and they wanted to start a company, they always think of AI, right? It's been a buzzword. ChatGPT has really opened the eyes of possibility of AI. A lot of people want to venture in AI, but the thing is that as much as it is a buzz and it is the future for sure, also means the market is very contested. And we in Malaysia, we see today, for example, there's a lot of replication of ChatGPT, right? They can be very specific in, maybe, for example, building a personal brand, engineering, and so on, right? But again, right, I think recently ChatGPT has just launched the new version where you today they can do all these things, right?
Yeah.
So then it'll be difficult for startups. So what I'm curious, right? So just to again set the base, I'm curious, like maybe you can tell us a little bit more on this hype, right? So AI, Web3, blockchain, for example. Um, what's your comment on this? Where especially investors that believe that this is more than just like a hype. Yeah, and then you would think that, hey, wow, this really would change the game, right?
I think like to me personally, and I think like specific to AI, I do believe that it's here to stay. I believe that AI is the kind of technology that actually transcends all different industries and different kinds of business model. I'm not saying this to force anyone to retrofit or like force fit AI into their businesses or products, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying this is that I see it as an opportunity to accelerate a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think like what startups can do, at least like if you're thinking about building a company related to AI or in the AI space, you need to find that innovation window, a specific innovation opportunity. So just to give you an example, like how do you actually create unique value propositions for your customers, right? And maybe it's that unique value proposition that is I don't know, like for example, like Case Hex, or for example, like Harvey, which is also similar legal AI kind of a space. It's so specific, right? And they are trained very specifically for a specific use case in the legal industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like those opportunities stand a bigger chance,
Yes.
as opposed to like ChatGPT having to launch their own Harvey AI, for example, right? And like in terms of like distribution of those products, because a lot of like AI companies at the moment, they are actually like, if any one of you have read the Gen AI Fund's Asian, State of the AI report, you will know that more than 90% of the AI companies across ASEAN are actually B2B startups, right?
Yeah.
So meaning that you will need to create products that are of enterprise grade to be able to sell to enterprise customers in the B2B segment, right?
Yeah.
Or even in a state where like businesses would want to adopt. So how can you create those? And distribution is also something that is important in this process, right? So like, are there ways that you could work with big techs or even like existing companies to help you distribute those technology?
Yeah.
Just for example, like Adobe, they recently integrated AI into their Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're using that, but yeah. So like that is one of the ways to leverage existing channels like Adobe or Adobe as a platform to distribute your AI.
Yes. I agree with you. Besides just Adobe, like maybe Canva, even right now we're editing the podcast. I don't know, even TikTok videos and so on, are all kind of like venturing into AI, where it just few buttons of clicks and then you get to have your video ready. So very interesting. Yes, I do agree. So in that sense, right? I'm just curious again based on my experience, right? So since now we know that there's a trend, right? You've stated 3 trends, and then we talk about AI. Based on your opinion, and do you believe that AI will helps? I mean, having an AI element on starting an AI startup or enhanced by AI kind of startup will helps or give you a better chance in terms of fundraising, right? So again, we talk about trends, and then you're from easy fundraising, background. So I'm just curious, like because I do hear like, hey, some of the companies mainly just want to implement AI. Not that it's not good. AI is always good, right? You need to enhance effectiveness, efficiency, and so on. But one of the reason is also to enhance or increase the value of the company. Right? What's your thought on this?
I think like first thing I'll say is probably don't blindly chase trends or try to force a technology that you may not be familiar with into your company or your products, because that will definitely backfire, right? You know, if you're just not well versed, or if you're just a company that doesn't really need AI, then don't force it, right? Like what gives you a higher valuation is actually your revenue and your business fundamentals, and not whether your company has AI or not.
Yeah.
Of course, like for different sectors, different benchmarks applies and stuff like that. But I think like what's most important is really to build something that actually solves your customers' problems, right? If you have done that, then that's great, right? So just to take an example, right? Grab is such a big company today, right? But it doesn't mean that they're a big company means they need to force AI to their products immediately, right? Or jump onto the trend like without thinking twice. Actually, they've done so many research and R&D behind to assimilate AI into their products, right? Only fairly recently, I think like in September or August, that they actually assimilated AI or launched this. I think the term is like Grab Ride something, right? Basically, it's to provide driver partners an enhanced experience in obtaining real-time demand for their customers. And just on the day, because they've done so much research and stuff like that, on the day of the beta launch, they realized that driver partners who are using this new feature actually has like 20% increase in earnings per online hour, right? So it's actually a very calculated decision whether to assimilate AI or not, instead of like just blindly chasing whatever tech kind it could be. Like today, maybe AI, tomorrow it could be something else, right?
Yeah. So for example, maybe I give a scenario like I want to be a founder. I want to start a company. I doesn't know which one. Then I'm pounding into AI today. And I this perception, okay, if I start an AI company compared to maybe software as a service, for example, then maybe a traditional ones, but it's still a tech, but not utilizing AI. Would the company, I mean, based on your experience as in the venture capital industry, would the evaluation of the AI company higher compared to tech, and would they have a higher chances of raising fund compared to a software as a service business?
I would say no.
Mm.
At least like just based on my personal experience.
Yes.
Um, I think like going back to what I said earlier is really about like the business fundamentals and the market opportunity. And of course, like so many other factors, like whether the founder, whether that's a founder idea fit, right, and whether the team is equipped to solve that problem. I think like a lot of times like during early stages, I think investors are getting smarter and more careful in terms of like uh, what it actually means to be an AI company.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of talks about the term like ChatGPT rappers in the market these days, right? I think like a lot of investors are working very hard to identify those or distinguish those from a true AI company. So it doesn't mean that like you can just simply put AI in the company name or like a product to fetch a high valuation. That's definitely not true.
Yeah. So we know that founders actually often feel pressure to go with the latest trend, right?
Mhm.
I do have some friends, they're doing business, they venture into AI
Mm.
or adopting using AI, like you said, they force a way to it because it's a trend. But
Mm.
maybe the business is not to that level that need to utilize artificial intelligence yet, right?
Mm.
So how can, based on your, maybe give an advice to our listeners today, right? How can they strike a balance between leveraging on trendy tech ideas and the latest tech trends, and staying grounded in solid business fundamental, which is profit, right?
Mm.
Because sometimes you invest in AI means you increase your cost.
Mm.
Because today tech, yes, on a longer run you reduce your cost, but maybe in eventually the shorter run, the idea does it you have
Mm.
to pay more, right? So how can it strike a balance in
Mm.
this?
I think the like founders who are more thoughtful
Mm.
will find a way to strike a balance between distribution of resources
Mm.
and innovation, right? Because if you are just blindly increasing the speed of like growth or innovation without understanding the right capabilities that you have within the organization or the right resources that you have,
Yeah.
it's just a terrible thing to do, especially like as a startup. Resource is very limited, right?
Yes.
You need to understand, like, firstly, be self-aware of like the organizational capabilities and expertise, of course, and secondly, like understand like what are the available resources to you at this point in time, and then because launching a product, whether it's AI, non AI,
Yeah.
that it requires a lot of iterations
Yeah.
until you get to the point of like showing it to your customers or anyone who wants to use it, right?
Yeah.
So I think like before you get to that point, you really need to understand like how much resources do you have and strike a balance between those things.
Nice one. That's very good, right? Yep. So going back to the fundraising, so I believe fundraising has changed on annual basis, and probably over the 5 years has changed a lot, right? Based on the number of money you put into which kind of industry.
Mm.
So what do you think are the biggest shift that you have seen based on your experiences? How startup, when it comes to approaching fundraising today, let's say compared to 5 years ago?
Mm, I think like I probably can break it down into three
Mm.
different things or different observations, if you will. So I think the first thing is that we definitely realized that post the 2021 era that um, it's definitely tougher in terms of fundraising
Mm.
right now, right? Like you should expect like maybe an additional 6 to 12 months more than what a typical process would be like for a fundraising process. Because people will just take a little bit more time to diligence the company and also like to observe the market because it's so volatile at the moment, right? And especially when markets are relatively softer at the moment. Yeah, so do expect or budget a little bit more time when you're
Yeah.
thinking about fundraising versus your runway that you have at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one. And two, I think like we are starting to observe or experience, right, the impact of deal terms
Mm.
as an investor and also as a startup founder.
Yeah.
So maybe like 5 years ago, when the industry is relatively nascent, people don't really understand what it means to sign off on certain terms, right? But today, if let's say you agree to uh, if you agree to a participating liquidation preference, for example, right?
Yeah.
If you agree to 1x, what it actually means is that if an investor invests, I don't know, 2 million for 10%
Yeah.
in your startup, and your startup gets sold at 10 million.
Mm.
what it means for participating liquidation preference is that the investor will first get the 1x, which is the 2 million investment amount, and then another 10% of the remaining amount, which is what it is, 800K, right? So in total, they would get 2.8 million.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you agree to a non-participating liquidation preference, which is also 1x, then they would only get back the higher of either the 2 million, which is the 1x, or 10%, in which case they will only get back 2 million.
Yeah.
So it impacts the founders' liquidity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But of course, like it's also sometimes depending on several factors to which we reach at the relevant times of the round, right? So I think like we are beginning to see those impact of deal terms, especially in a market that liquidity is and I guess like I don't want to use the term issue, but I can't really think about a better term to use right now. Yeah, and I guess like the third thing is that in terms of like price or valuations, right? So I think like previously, maybe around like 2019 to 2022, people are more valuation insensitive from an investor viewpoint. But obviously, like that has stabilized over time. I think like today, if a startup is benchmarking itself to a company that have fundraised a similar round during that period of time, you should definitely adjust your expectations. Because that has definitely come down over time. And like to a certain extent, I think like price or valuation is in some sense a vanity metric. Like some founders would think that, oh, I want to raise at XYZ valuation because it gives me a sense where like I'm better than anyone else if I raise at a higher valuation. But that's actually not really true. I think like what's more important is really to find an investor that could add value to the company in the longer run. And long-term growth is something that you should prioritize as a company over time.
Interesting. Very interesting. So I'd like to bring it a bit further. So now we are covering the fundraising as well. And then now let's say, for example, we had this phrase of growing, which we want to scale, right? Scaling up. So, but again, this time we talk about striking a balance. And right now, we heard a lot about scaling fast, not just scaling, not just growing, but fast, right? So what about scaling smart, right? As in like knowing the timing of your growth of the company, and again, based on your experience, what would be the advice that you have for founders, right, to avoid burning out, not just themselves, but a company where they're going beyond the capabilities and they end up using everything, and also beyond, to avoid overextending when they actually could scale smarter.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting question. I think scaling fast is not like you hear a lot of VCs or like investors or like even people around in the industry saying like, hey, like venture capital means that you must scale fast and you need to hit like X amount of revenues in X amount of years and you need to have triple digit growth on a year-on-year basis, right? But I think like going back to what I said earlier as well is that increasing speed of growth without really rationalizing how much energy or even like resources in terms of like capital or human, right? Like you need a team to actually execute those strategies for you. I think it's definitely very terrible thing to do to a startup because you just like accelerate fast and then I don't know, crash, right? So that's definitely not a wise thing to do. I think like a lot of people just get very excited. It could be in a good or a bad way when you first started your company, right? Of course, you want to like be excited and very passionate about it. But of course, like that comes with a lot of balance, which is why like attracting a good co-founder is very important because this person, to the second part of the question is that to avoid burning out, there are actually a lot of ways, right? Especially in a founder context, because being a founder is actually a very lonely journey. It's not something that you can share your worries with a team member, right? Or like share your worries with your parents, right? So most of the time you have your co-founder's shoulder to lie on, right? Is somebody that you can share your burden with, or like the challenges that you see in the company, right? Other than the co-founder, of course, you could also seek advice or help from investors, which is why I said like earlier that it's important to choose an investor or the right investor to who's able to help you accelerate not just in from a business perspective, but also help you grow and listen to you, or someone that you can confide in, right? When you know that your company is going through tough times.
Cool. Before we wrap up, so
Okay.
let's do a quick fire round, right? So I have 4 questions, very simple. I'd like to hear one sentence answer or probably few words answer. So what are the next big thing in tech startup?
AI.
Yeah, like what are the most overhyped trend in tech startups?
Right now, it's also AI. That's why we kind of need to be like very careful
Yeah.
as investors to sieve out the right AI startups and founders as well to build in the right uh, in the right segment.
Yes.
You need to basically overlook like all your competition and build better than them, which is how like people like Uber or Airbnb,
Yes.
sort of like change the whole trajectory of the industry.
Yeah. I also believe, for example, yes, the AI having AI is to solve a lot of humans' problems. But if you go to that, how can you differentiate from which is normally we talk about AI is ChatGPT, for example. Right? You are trying to solve a problem, which using AI, you solve a problem, but how can you differentiate from because I'm pretty sure most of the population in the world is using ChatGPT. So I think that is very important. So final question. So maybe before you wrap up, right? So what would be the one piece advice that you want the listeners to remember? Like they can forget everything about today's session, but there's one thing is so important, especially we talk about fundraising, tech trends, AI, semiconductor, health tech, and so many things that you have talked about. Yeah, they should take away from today's session.
I think I'm assuming like most of the listeners are founders or aspiring founders. I think maybe the one takeaway that I would share is that when you're fundraising, pick the right investor who believe in you and will
Yeah.
journey with you in the long run. Because like contrary to popular belief, there are so many types and ways of fundraising out there. So it doesn't mean that venture capital is the only way to fundraise. You can also fundraise through debt. You can also fundraise through grants, right?
Yeah.
There's so many other ways that you could raise money, right? So I think the most important question is, how do you find the right investor who would be willing to journey and help you along the way?
Just to add on, how can we find the of course, finding investors they could trust you, it takes time, right? So it becomes luck, connections, so on. But maybe just for founders, they say, for example, they're building up something, they need the funds. So how?
I think like just expand the network a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like by talking to more investors. That way you get to sort of like understand like what their philosophy is and their investment mandate as well. Whether that's synergistic to your business, right? Because the mandate is the easiest question to ask, which is factual. And secondly, like understand like the investor's philosophy and personality as to whether like he or she is able to champion the company for the long run.
Yeah.
And it's about working together actually, right? Like, are you able to work with this investor for at least 5 years, right? If you're able to see yourself doing that, then I think like, yeah, like with the, right economics and also like the right personality, I think like it would be great addition to the team.
Great. And can the listeners find you as well? I mean, for fundraising.
Oh, yes. So listeners can definitely find me on LinkedIn. It's my name, Meredith.
Awesome. Great. So thanks so much, Amanda. Very insightful. No, I really like some of the insights that I've shared. So I hope it benefits the listeners today. And thank you so much. Hopefully we get to speak again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joseph, for having me.